At this time, I would like to go to the gentlewoman from Missouri, Miss Wagner, who is now recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chair. Mr. Sears, uh, can you elaborate and tell me why is access to credit important in achieving economic freedom and prosperity? Just in general, before we set the table here.
Sure, sure. Well, thank you for the question and thank you for your support of this work. I don't think 5 minutes is going to give us nearly enough time to actually answer that question, unfortunately. As my colleagues have noted, access to capital in our country is the underpinning of literally everything that moves our economy. If LGBTQ people can't have access to mortgages, we can't own homes. If we end up paying more as on APRs, as my colleague Spencer mentioned, we are literally being taken advantage of by the system. And so if we look at even the bill that's under discussion, it's about reporting. It's about making sure LGBTQ people are listed in that definition of diversity so that we can measure access to credit and housing and actually how that does impact our economic outcomes.
And Mr. Sears, how can our financial institutions build relationships to foster financial literacy, for instance?
Well, interestingly, they have been for many, many years. One of my favorite programs was at Merrill Lynch many years ago called IPO, Investing Pays
Mhm.
Off, that was started almost 25 years ago on the idea actually that Charlie Merrill, who was the founder of Merrill Lynch, started when he would write widows of World War II veterans and offer advice for how they could invest in their pensions. And so the opportunity for these financial institutions to expand what they've been doing for many years, I think is significant. And they actually are doing it. If you look at Investing Pays Off for Merrill, or 10,000 small businesses from Goldman Sachs. There are significant investments these companies are making, but the challenge is that we don't have the numbers. We don't have the ability for these institutions to provide the access because we're not counted as an LGBTQ community. If Goldman wants to expand their 10,000 small business to focus on LGBT small businesses, the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce is the only place they can go for that data. The federal government does not have that data. So
Well,
once we can actually count, then we can start to be a part of it. Yeah.
well, I thank you for that statement, and that then kind of tees things up for Max Watson, because you talk, Max Watson, about data collection, and can you elaborate on that a little bit more, as Mr. Sears has just kind of teed up here?
Yeah, so there is a significant information gap about LGBTQ people because there is inadequate data collection of sexual orientation and gender identity in federal surveys. So it is important for all data collections where we are examining economic well-being, but really just our communities overall, that we include questions that ask people about their gender and their gender identity, their sex as assigned at birth, and their sexual orientation. And that would vastly improve our understanding of the unique circumstances that LGBTQ people experience. And also, it's important to include these in enforcement data collections, such as the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act or the forthcoming 1071 data collection for small businesses.
Thank you. And Mr. Sears, what steps can financial institutions take to support the and underbanked communities? What are some of your thoughts in that arena?
Well, at the very least, looking at the policies. One of my colleagues mentioned that LGBTQ people are still excluded from so many policies. I would use HSBC Life as a great example. They rewrote the definition of insurable interest to expand that definition to include LGBTQ families, including in places like Asia, where gay couples still have no relationship recognition. And if you look at the policies through every single of these financial institutions, there are significant opportunities to identify those exact same areas. If we're not counted in how these companies approach, then they're not going to be able to actually include us across the board.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for your testimony here today. Madam Chairman, I will yield back the brief time that I have left. Thank you.